and a very warm welcome to this edition of Talking Europe. The EU is sleepwalking towards a cliff. Words of warning from Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, who says austerity rules are creating inequalities across the bloc. Greek national debt is set to reach over 180% of GDP. This week, Tsipras rallied leaders of 6 southern EU countries in a bid to form a united group, a front, he said, to fight for debt restructuring and act as a counterweight to the pressure of austerity measures he felt were being prescribed by mostly northern countries. Greece also wants to form a united front on migration. 8 years after the start of the country's financial crisis, unemployment in Greece is still the highest in the EU, and Athens is facing another standoff with creditors as complaints grow that it has implemented only 2 of 15 reforms required by its bailout deal. But Greece is not alone in its economic woes. Italy's banks are close to breaking. Meanwhile, across in Germany, it showed a larger than expected budget surplus in the first half of the year. So are northern EU states being too harsh on the south? And what might this alliance of Mediterranean countries actually achieve? To help us understand, we're joined by Greek MEP Stelios Kouloglou. Thanks for being with us. Across on the other side of the table, we have Italy's Brando Benafei. And beside you from Germany, Michael Galler. And let me start with this alliance that your Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, has called. What is his idea? Why does he feel the need for this grouping of Mediterranean countries?
Well, you know, the countries of the south of Europe have been affected much more than the north for the economic, as far as the economic crisis is concerned, but also as far as the refugees question. Last week, during the summit of G20, it was already obvious that everybody said that we have to change course and invest on development and not any more austerity. And this must be done also by the countries of the south. It's not an aggressive policy against the north or against a certain country, but it's a proposal to change policy that had a disastrous effect, both for the south but also for the north.
Mr. Galler, how do you react to this, willingness to pledge to try and get countries to work in unison against these austerity measures, trying to fight to have a new restructuring on the debt?
Well, first of all, I think it's good if any constellation or grouping of member states meet and think a better way out of difficult situations. I mean, we have altogether been constructive and very helpful to those under pressure. I mean, if I recall, 4 of the 5 countries who were under this, shall I say, rescue umbrella have already gone out again, and the only one remaining is Greece, and we are eager to help on. But as a Christian Democrat, I say, we always know you can only spend what you have earned before. You can never, nobody, no citizen, no state can at the long run spend more than you earn.
And indeed, that does appear not to be the case in many of countries. Mr. Benefei, how do you see things? Do you think there is a certain harshness imposed by the possibly more prosperous northern countries on these southern parts of the EU?
I would put the thing from a different perspective, because I think that it's clear that the Eurozone as a still very incohesive group of countries is coming up. And so the southern countries are trying to find some solutions together. So I see the summit as positive in this sense. So a new building blocks, set of building blocks for the Eurozone that come from the south to rebalance an uneven union of the currency.
Do you want those common across the Eurozone?
I think this must be brought together, but it must come from the south, because these countries from the south of Europe have the strongest understanding of what is being done negatively until now in terms of economic policy. They have seen it in their flesh. But I'm also happy that in Ventotene, the leader also of Germany, Merkel, joined with Hollande and Renzi with an ideal symbolic meeting that can be a paveway for this kind of future action together.
Well, I'm not dogmatic by any means when it's about the 1% financing threshold for the EU. I'm clearly in favor of having more union budget, but I think the size we will never get the size to communitarize the big social systems, and the traditions are far too different in this regard. I think it is definitely about the reform to make those systems that are not working, to adapt them to the changing reality. We cannot escape reality in our politics.
Do you think perhaps though the Brexit decision, the country that was seen more aligned with Germany in many ways on trying to be harsh on those country budgets, do you think that will leave Germany in a weaker position and perhaps southern countries more in a place of having more power and imposing the kind of economic measures across the EU that they want to see?
But it was not a northern decision to be harsh on the south. We have been harsh to ourselves. We have had the Agenda 2010 from a socialist chancellor at the time, and we have gone through it. And I think nobody can escape the necessity to reform in the adequate framework. And in this field, in this regard, we are solidaric, we are able to and willing to be helpful, but not to sustain old structures that have proven not to work.
No one says we don't need reforms. The point is that we have at the moment a common currency area that is unbalanced towards the interests of the southern economies. And so we want more common investment, instruments to complete the banking union, to have fiscal coordination so that we cannot have a fiscal unruly competition, and so that we complete a balanced monetary union that is not seen as giving only to the interest of the strongest countries, Germany first of all.
Mr. Kouloglou, when we think of harsh measures, a part of that most recent Greek bailout did seem pretty harsh. There was 15 reforms to be put in place. A review is coming up on that. Where is Greece standing? Do you think it's going to meet its bailout requirements, or does it need more leniency, as Tsipras is saying?
Greece has made the most drastic changes ever happened in the history of the world economy after the crash of the last century. So everything has changed. The pensions of the state have been diminished. The number of the public employees have been dramatically diminished. Everything has been done. But this is not enough. Okay, you must have a fiscal discipline. That was not the case for Greece in the past. That's correct. But now we need development. We need money is needed to change. For the people to have, to have jobs, and
if things continue as is, you're just digging a bigger hole.
Otherwise, it's not going. And it's not by chance that all the countries of the south are suffering. You cannot, unless if you submit to theories like the Southerns are lazy and corrupt and this kind of stuff. No. I mean, this has to do. It's a systematic problem of the euro. I mean, the North countries have profited from the euro, and the South countries have not profited at all. They have been completely destroyed by the euro.
Well, first of all, if I look to Spain and Portugal, they have done their homework. They are, as they said, not under this rescue umbrella anymore. When I look to Italy, entrepreneurs tell me in Italy they are creative, which they are. They have ideas, but it's this enormous bureaucracy that strangles them. And I think that is where you can really liberate and trigger the enormous creativity, and the same may apply in Greece as well, that the public sector and all the rules and civil servants that are preventing people from really undertaking something, I think that is the better approach than to simply pour money into structures that are not very efficient.
But do you think Portugal and Spain are doing well? Spain, because of the economic crisis, is not able to have a government. They will have a third election
they have
definitely.
They have, if you look at the macroeconomic figures, they are on a good track.
Still high unemployment. But there's another issue, Mr. Gallo, I was looking at. Because of this higher than expected surplus for the first couple of months of the year in Germany, a lot of people in Brussels and indeed heads of state around the EU are calling on Germany to spend more. They say that actually you're doing damage. Running up to the third year in the black, you're damaging by not spending.
I think we'll, if you look at the draft next federal budget, which I think goes from 300 billion to 329 billion. And if you look also at the consumption of the people. And I also, as I said, I'm not I am not fixed to the 1% of the EU budget. I see the point, but I would rather think that through a larger union budget, which could then be used specifically to bridge certain gaps and to help reform, I think that is where the real
For
good
the Greek
approach would be.
bailout, do you think there needs to be more flexibility? Do you think it needs to be revised, perhaps?
I see the 180% debt where you stand at the moment. And I would not exclude, although it's not currently on the agenda, I would not exclude in the medium term another cut. We have had one. That is what I would not exclude, although, as I said, it's not at the agenda at the very moment.
Okay, well, this Greek meeting, once again, that was taking place on Friday in Athens, was looking at the economy, but also the migration issue. Refugees, indeed, continuing to arrive into the EU. Let's take a look at the latest in this report.
Just one of many lifeboats sent by the Italian Coast Guard. Across in Palermo a few hours earlier, a similar scene. Hundreds of migrants saved. Many of these people have come from sub-Saharan Africa, travelling first to Libya and then attempting the treacherous crossing to Europe. On Monday, the Italian Coast Guard announced it had rescued 2,700 people, while 15 bodies were pulled from the Sicilian Channel. Trips from Libya to Italy have been on the increase in recent months. The EU signed a deal with Turkey last March, and as a consequence, the Balkans route more or less closed, leaving people to look for new pathways to EU countries. In the month of August alone, some 14,000 people were rescued in their attempts to make the crossing from Libya to Italy.
Well, you can see there are people continuing to arrive into the EU, more so in Italy this year, something like almost 120,000 so far. Do you think the EU needs to come together more financially? What EU-level support is there for Italy in this?
I think this is really crucial because we cannot have solidarity stopping at the level of the cohesion funds. My government has been saying it very many times, and I also agree with this position that European solidarity must be built also on the management of the refugee flows. The relocation scheme hasn't worked very much until now, so we have also to look around it to find different solutions, also financial instruments, also financial contributions from the countries that are not doing their part.
Is there a way of getting that budget together?
Well, first of all, we have taken something from the budget, for instance, $1 billion for Turkey to host people there. That is one aspect. But I'm also in favor, as long as we have the unfortunate situation that not every EU member state is prepared to have its share of refugees, that those who do not take anybody, that they should additionally contribute, or via a new budget through means that they wouldn't get, but it would be diverted towards those countries that actually host the refugees.
Something like still 50,000 people currently blocked in Greece. What kind of a cost is that on the Greek state? How much is that playing into financial?
It is a huge cost, and it adds on the other problems. Because, you know, the money given from the European Union is not going to the state. It goes to NGOs, but not to the state. So the state has to pay more for the hospitals, for the everyday life.
For money to the government.
But you know, for once the agreement on the relocation must be respected, and the countries that are not complying, they must be punished. It's not a problem because every time in the economic policy you have a little problem, 50 million missing, you must be punished. Every time you are not privatizing an airport for a German company, or you are punished. But if you are violating all the agreements concerning the relocation, you are not punished.
But also we should look
what Europe is this?
over.
That's the reason. That's the reason Europe is going nowhere now.
I think we should also look over a bit to the approach of strengthening the borders, having a stronger common foreign policy to stabilize the Mediterranean, but this is not sufficient. There is a broader social issue so that we avoid bringing vulnerable groups one against the other. It's crucial if we want to really integrate those who will
but the
get
EU at 28 should maybe work together on this, and they're
absolutely.
not.
I think
And there's
there is no solution, and we have to use all the leverage of the institutions, also financial instruments, as also colleague Galler has mentioned, of asking countries that are not ready to get the refugees to contribute, because we must insist in the sense that this is a matter of European
solidarity. We're running out of
solidarity.
time in this half, but let me just get very briefly your opinion on something. EU finance ministers were again meeting in Slovakia, looking at possible tax harmonisation across the EU. Seems a long way off, but it's one way of addressing these tax avoidance by multinationals. We did see a pretty big decision from the European Commission a couple of weeks ago, asking Ireland really to collect 13 billion from Apple. Quick opinion, did the Commission overstep its remit, or was this a necessary call?
I think it was a necessary and a good decision.
So Ireland needs to take it back, Mr. Goodlow?
That's the only good news coming from the European Union Commission, especially since the last 6 months.
I think this good decision showed that there are issues that have a transnational content that need to be addressed with communitarian institutions.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to thank my guests for joining us on this half of the show. We are going to look more specifically at that Apple tax and Ireland ruling in the second half with our guest, EU Competition Commissioner, Ms. Margaret Vestager. So do join us then after the news.